This episode is going to be about a very serious topic, guys. A topic about the evil that some parents plant inside their children and the toxic behaviors they unknowingly or even intentionally teach them. And honestly, it doesn't make a huge difference whether what happened was intentional or not. Because what we all agree on, and what's known and undeniable, is that no one will ever love a child more than their own parents. And obviously, there's no one who truly wants the best for you more than your mother and father. They always want their children to be better than them. That's a general rule, and there's no argument about it. Of course, and without a doubt, the first role models in any child's life are their parents. Children naturally copy and imitate their mom and dad in most aspects of life, and that's only normal, because the very first people a child lays eyes on are their parents. So it makes sense that most of what a child learns in life, especially in the early stages, comes from their mother and father. But unfortunately, when the parents are narcissists, or even when just one of them has narcissistic traits, I don't think anyone would want to take a narcissist as their role model. Yet one of the things we don't get to choose in life is our parents. Whether the mother or father is good or bad, that's just part of the reality we're born into. And there's no escape from that. Today's topic is about the harmful traits that narcissistic parents can instill in their children. And sadly, these traits can be deeply damaging, even evil. Now, let me be very clear. This episode isn't about promoting rebellion against parents or calling for disobedience in any way or under any circumstances. What we're trying to do here is to understand these dynamics so we can either avoid being harmed or begin healing from the damage already done. We'll also talk about how to recognize these toxic patterns and how to overcome the negative effects they've left in us. So first, let me tell you what these harmful and toxic traits are, the ones we'll be discussing today. These traits include mockery, disgust, belittling, and envy. The first three, mockery, disgust, and belittling, are very similar in many ways, but we'll also discuss how they're different. The one thing these three traits have in common is that they leave the child with an intense feeling of self-hatred. I'm sure you've heard someone say about a certain kid, no one can love or tolerate that child except his mom or dad. Of course, even if the whole world doesn't love or respect us, we expect that our parents will always be the ones to support, love, and stand by us. That's something we take for granted. Even children view life this way, and they base their whole sense of self and security on that assumption. A child might look at their life and think confidently, I have a home, I have food, I'm being taken care of. That must mean my parents love me. But at some point, that same child might quietly start to ask themselves, why do I sometimes feel like I hate myself? It's an incredibly difficult moment for any child when they start to feel this way. Because if that child ever went and asked one of their parents, I feel like you don't love me, the parent's reaction would likely be full of sarcasm, making the child feel like there's something wrong with them just for thinking that way. Unfortunately, this is how many parents think. They believe that the proof of their love and care is all the material things they provide, like food, clothes, school, and a roof over the child's head. So, for narcissistic parents, love is shown through material things. But what the child doesn't understand is that even though all of those things are there, what's missing is emotional support. The child is emotionally starved, and sadly, most parents don't even realize this, often without meaning to. But I'm talking here about the behaviors and actions that lead a child to feel this way, to feel something so heavy and painful. So how does the narcissistic parent actually plant this deep sense of self-hatred in their child? The narcissistic parent constantly projects huge amounts of emotional energy onto their children. And because narcissists often carry deep self-hatred and despise their own vulnerability, they unconsciously pass those emotions onto their children. But kids don't understand this. They can't see what's going on inside their narcissistic parent. All the child feels is rejection and humiliation, like when the parent mocks them, makes fun of a question they ask, or ridicules a thought they share. Instead of explaining things gently or helping the child understand a world, the parent humiliates them, and the child internalizes this. They think the mockery is their fault, that something is wrong with them, because they can't process or interpret the parent's emotional projections. What makes things even more confusing for the child is that the parent doesn't openly say things like, "I hate you," or "you disgust me." Instead, these feelings are implied through parenting behaviors and sarcastic comments. Like when a parent says, "How could you do something so awful?" Or, "No normal person would ever act like that." These aren't real questions expecting an answer. They're loaded statements, subtle accusations meant to make the child feel like there's something truly wrong with them. Even the tone and emotional intensity of the narcissistic parent's reaction is overwhelming, often full of rage or extreme disappointment. And it shows up in many different ways. Some parents might say something like, "I love you just because you're my daughter," or "I love you because you're my son, not because you're a good person." Even if it's said jokingly, a child doesn't interpret it that way. They take it literally, and the message becomes, "If I weren't your child, you wouldn't love me at all." This is how narcissistic parents plant destructive beliefs in their kids, through these kinds of emotionally loaded statements and questions. Another painful example, saying to a child, "How can you be this stupid? Are you brainless?" Or, "Do you even think before you do anything?" And in cases of divorce or separation, when a child is raised by one parent, they might hear, "You're just like your father," said negatively to a child raised by their mother. Or, "You're just like your mother," if raised by the father. These statements are said with contempt for the other parent, and it ends up making the child feel like they inherited something awful. This kind of talk fills the child with endless shame and self-hatred, and sadly, that feeling stays with them for the rest of their life. After being exposed to so many toxic beliefs and insults, the child starts to believe they're a failure, that there's nothing good inside them. They carry that belief into every relationship and interaction they have later in life. But here's the tragic part. Those awful feelings of shame, self-loathing, and humiliation were never originally part of the child's personality. They were planted in them, and over time, they became rooted and settled in like they were part of who the child is. Now, the fourth toxic trait that narcissistic parents instill in their children is envy. And just so, there are two kinds of envy here. The first kind is the envy that the parent feels toward the child. Yes, it happens. This often comes up when the child succeeds at something. Even though it may seem like the parent is happy and proud, deep down, there's envy. And this is incredibly strange and hurtful, because how can a parent be jealous of their own child's success? But with narcissistic parents, it's more common than you think. The second kind of envy is the one that gets planted inside the child from a very early age. This happens through comparisons. Like when a narcissistic mother tells her daughter, "Look at that other girl. She does everything for her mom. Her mom is so lucky to have her." Or, "Look how helpful and respectful that kid is. Why can't you be like that?" She's not directly criticizing her daughter with that kind of comment, but what the child actually hears and feels is that she's less than others, that she's not good enough, not like that other girl. And this is how envy gets planted inside the child from a very early age. It's a deeply damaging trait. Being constantly compared to others during childhood makes the child feel like they're lacking something, like they're incomplete or not worthy. When parents plant these toxic emotions and traits in their children, they usually don't do it through direct words or accusations. They do it through hints, suggestions, and subtle implications. And that's what makes it so dangerous, because these messages embed themselves deep in the child's psyche and stay with them for life, eventually becoming part of who they are. This is how a child gets pulled into the world of narcissism, through the internalized belief that they're not enough or less than others, all because their parents made them feel like everyone else was better than them. So what can you do if you feel like this happened to you? What if you're carrying that feeling inside right now? How can you get back to your true, healthy self, the person you were before all of this was planted in you? You honestly don't need much, just a little time and effort and a willingness to show compassion to yourself and love yourself a little more. Our problem is that we keep looking at ourselves through the same lens that our parents looked at us through, full of judgment, blame, and criticism. But that perspective is not the truth. You have to stop believing every negative thing you've been told about yourself. Stop identifying with everything inside you that someone labeled as bad or not enough. Start focusing more on your positive qualities. Flip the script on all those negative beliefs you've been carrying. Rewrite them. As children, we didn't understand what was happening to us. We didn't know how to handle the emotional abuse or confusion caused by narcissistic parents. But now, as adults, we have something we didn't have back then: emotional independence. And honestly, this change starts with one simple decision. Just like any decision you make in life, you can choose to keep seeing yourself through the lens of your narcissistic upbringing, as someone broken, flawed, or unworthy. Or you can choose to finally recognize your worth, love yourself more deeply, show yourself empathy and respect more than you ever have before. Because by doing that, you'll reclaim your true self, the one that existed before those harmful traits were forced into you. The truth is, no one chooses their parents, but you can absolutely choose how you treat yourself. And you can overcome the toxic ideas that were planted inside you by narcissistic parents.